How are we doing? Well, let me just get myself sorted. Who's here? Who's visiting here for the first time? Maybe you came for a dedication. There's a few of you. Well, you won't know me. Yeah, I'm Johnny. I'm a worship pastor down in Bournemouth, south coast by the beach. So it pained me yesterday to drive away with the crowds. What felt like hundreds of thousands of people descending on Bournemouth, and I was stuck driving to North London. Here we go. But it is a joy to be here because I love your church. And yeah, if you are new, let me just tell you that this is an amazing church. This is a wonderful church. I'm good friends with Eduardo and Thiago and Pastor Mark. There's a lot of people that I know and love here. And it's nice to just come. I've been a few times to lead worship and be around, but it's nice to be here and just to kind of sit and kind of observe what God's doing. And it's special. Do you guys sense that God's doing something special here? It's really beautiful. So I'd encourage you just to give all that you can in this season, relationally, build friendships, go for food with people, enjoy God together, but actually, more than just arriving on a Sunday, you're coming to something that God is doing, and he wants you to be a part of that. So if you're new, there's a space for you. I would love to be here more than I can, but I'm here today. Thanks. Well, I wonder what you would say if I asked you what your highest priority is. What would happen if you took an inventory of your life, the things that you value most? Which one thing would rise to the top? Maybe it would be to take care of your family or to prioritize your health. Maybe it would be to achieve that one career goal or promotion that you've been working towards. Or maybe, if you're really holy, it would be to read the Bible a bit more, be a bit more like Jesus. Well, if you've been at a vineyard church for any amount of time, you might have heard this phrase. We say it every week at my church, but we say worship is our highest priority. Now, we live in a time where catchphrases and sound bites are so often used that they can become familiar rhetoric. These words that we hear repeatedly but never really stop to consider. Well, as I've spent time doing that, stopping, considering for this message, I've lingered on the enormity of this statement, that worship is our highest priority. And just so we're all on the same page, what we're saying is that in the Vineyard movement, worship is our chief priority, the single most important thing that we do. Now, as the weight of such a big statement lands with you, maybe it brings up intrigue, maybe some curiosity, maybe even some uncertainty. But for a moment, stick with me, this guy that you don't know, and maybe hold your questions, maybe write them down as we unpack this message together. I know that some of you guys have been here for the last few weeks, and you've been in this worship series. Who's been enjoying it? Yeah? Who feels like they've learned something new? Crucially, who has something like practical tools that they can use to help in this life of worship? It's been good, right? So yeah, Pastor Mark, Eduardo, and Lissy have done a beautiful job of opening up the topic of worship and building a solid foundation that hopefully I can add to. You know, there are many aspects of worship that we could talk about today, whether it be song or deed or life laid down. But if I could give you one thing to walk away with today, my personal highest priority within this series that you're doing on worship, it would be this: that we would understand deeply that worship is about God and not about us. Worship has always been about what we can give to God, not what we can gain from him. To be a Christian, then, is to live a life of response to God. So then, worship is response. Every human on earth, past and present, has shared the same pursuit. We're all looking for an overarching purpose in life or a place to belong and to situate ourselves. And we go about this in different ways, aligning ourselves to worldviews, values, causes, or beliefs. And in this quest for purpose, we often try a bunch of different things, throwing ourselves from career to relationships to social causes or hobbies or the next viral lifestyle destined to bring us that happiness we're waiting for. But the problem has always been that once the shine has faded from the next new thing, we're left aching for something we can't seem to find. C.S. Lewis puts it like this, quote, yes, if I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world. I wonder, where in your life might you be searching for satisfaction or purpose? As Christians, we believe that the secret to discovering this other world that Lewis talks about, the place that we finally found the purpose we're craving, is found in God. Genesis 1:27 tells us that man was made in the image of God. Now, one thing that you don't know about me, that you can learn about me now, is that I'm an uncle, a very proud uncle to two little boys. And not long ago, my youngest nephew, Job, turned 1. And for all of you parents in the house, something happens. I don't know what happens at 1, but everything happens. Suddenly, overnight, he's been running around, chatting around, dancing away. And it's a lot of fun to be around a 1-year-old. But when I first held little Job as a baby, I could clearly see that he was made in the image of his parents. As crazy as it sounds, this is what we are told in Genesis. We, you and me, we're made in the image of God. We are the Imago Dei, or the image of God. And like little Job shares his parents' likeness, we have God's likeness. There's something innately within us that reflects the creator of the world. You can't change anything to do that. He's just done it for you. And being made in the image of God, we have this intuitive desire, a deep and almost primal need to know and to respond to our Maker. We can see around us the fingerprints of a creator, whether it's in the miracle of birth, the radiance of nature, or the beauty of music. But we, as the creation, can only find our true purpose in the Creator himself. We were made like all children to find our sense of belonging and identity and the loving care that we need from our Maker, but also to reflect his sacrificial and generous nature. Unfortunately, as we kind of skip forward in Genesis, we see that Adam and Eve turn away from God, choosing their own desires above the kind instructions of God. Their actions cause separation from him, because the problem is that creatures made for worship can't help but worship. We're all subconsciously looking for something to fill the vacuum of separation that was caused by sin, desperately trying to put something in the place that God should be. All of the things that we put our hope in, all of the things that we give our attention to and depend on, become the objects of our worship. So worship is not only an innate response that kind of springs up from us whether we want to or not, but it's also the correct response. This is our faith, the truth that we stand on, that not only were we lovingly made in the image of God to reflect and to respond to God, but that he has pursued us, despite the separation of our sin and our choice to worship other things. He is gracious and compassionate and slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. He saw the depth of our rebellion and at the same time was moved by the depth of our need for him and our inability to make ourselves right. And being rich in mercy, God sent his only Son to live among us, acquainting himself with our pain and the brokenness of the world, so that he might save us from ourselves and save us from sin. That though he never sinned or turned away from his Father, that he would suffer a torturous death, being nailed to a cross in our place, and then ultimately rise from the dead, so that we may never have to suffer death in the same way, but live with God forever and contribute to this coming kingdom where everything will be made new. Truly, there's no one like Jesus. There's no one that could have done what he's done for us. So in light of this then, how could we possibly respond to God? What could we possibly do in response? How do we take in the enormity of what God has done for us? We must respond. We must worship. The person of Jesus demands a response. And the funny thing is, we thank people for infinitely less. I'm often blown away by the kindness of my friends. And I remember being hosted in Sydney. What a place. A few years ago by my friends, and they covered me for everything. So I just arrived, got off the airport, and they whisked me away immediately to zoo. So that's what you do. So I stood by a koala and held an alligator and bits and bobs. But they covered me for everything. They paid for meals, they got my coffee, they gave me a place to stay. And it was so fun. And I didn't pay for anything. It was fantastic. Not least, to be fair, the amount of time that they put into making an amazing itinerary just for me to enjoy whilst I was over for a short time. And I made sure to thank them. But I felt a little embarrassed at their generosity. But this doesn't even slightly come close to the love and the sacrifice of Jesus. You see, that sacrifice was a week for them. It was money and it was time, and I can see that, and I thank them for that. But an eternal sacrifice requires an eternal response. That's why to give our lives is correct and fitting. How do we respond to this great love? We give everything the way that he gave everything. We say thank you, and we say thank you again. We revere and adore, and we give our lives for the things that are important to him. There's no other response. We must, by God's continuing grace, as Paul says in Romans, in view of God's mercy, offer our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. So why do we worship? Why is it our highest priority? Because it is not only our innate response, but it's the correct response. God is worthy not only of our adoration, but our action, not just our delight in him, but our diligence to live the way that he asks us to. Not just our ministry to him, but our ministry to others. He is worthy of everything. We as Christians are people of eternal response. What Jesus has done for us has marked us in such a way that we don't just live differently for a week, but we keep on becoming more like Jesus in response to him. We don't just have these singular moments of realization, accepting Jesus as a gift that we receive once, but we receive him daily as our King and thank him eternally. So worship is innate, it's correct, but it also has this funny way of resetting us and redirecting us. If you have a Bible, can I ask you to get out and flick to Romans 1? And before we read this, I want to credit Michael Miller, who's the pastor of Upper Room Church in Dallas. I've learned so much from him and from that church, and a lot of what I've kind of taken this point was from a podcast that I listened to called Why Say Thank You. So make sure you go and check that out and enjoy that. But here we are, Romans 1, 18 to 23. I'll I'll read it from here. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal human beings and birds and animals and reptiles. So this first section highlights that creation reveals God. Maybe easier for me to see in sunny Bournemouth by the beach than landlocked St Albans. But creation reveals God. And it's saying that even without Jesus, people are without excuse. The proof of God is all around us. But the verse that really struck me is verse 21. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. Now here, Paul is speaking to Christians, people that actually knew God. And I'm sure that we would probably say that most of us here this morning know God. And so this applies to us. Even though they knew God, they did not glorify him or give him thanks. So what happens when we don't thank God, when we don't glorify him? Well, for the rest of the chapter, Paul lists the disastrous effects. And there are a lot. Are you ready? It's grim. Here we go. We are told that their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened, that they stopped worshipping God and began worshipping idols. We're told that they're filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity, that they envy, murder, are full of strife, deceit, and malice, that they are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful, that they disobeyed their parents and have no understanding, no fidelity, and no mercy, that they practice all kinds of sexual immorality, and to top it off, it even goes as far as saying they invent new ways of sinning. All of that because they didn't thank or honor God. Now this is a weighty passage. It doesn't make for a comfortable read, but if we were to pause for a moment, I wonder whether you can see those symptoms playing out in our communities, in the news, or maybe even in ourselves. And isn't that just the story of human nature in one chapter? When we don't worship, when we don't keep God at the center, we inevitably put ourselves at the center. We make ourselves the main character of our own story and spiral further than we could believe possible. The moment we lose perspective of who God is and stop responding to his lordship and his kindness, we're in a world of trouble. Eugene Peterson writes this: worship is the strategy by which we interrupt our preoccupation with ourselves and attend to the presence of God. Worship is the time and place that we assign for deliberate attentiveness to God. Not because he's confined to time and place, but because our self-importance is so insidiously relentless that if we don't deliberately interrupt ourselves regularly, we have no chance of attending to him at all at other times or in other places. That's good, eh? Who's like, I'm selfish? Yes. Just me. Yes, worship is our whole lives, but it's also the blocks of time that we set aside to behold Jesus, to take our eyes off of ourselves and put them onto him. It's the act of stopping and doing what the Romans did not, thanking and glorifying God, to see him rightly. You see, worship is a divine reordering. You may be starting to see the beginnings of that destructive fruit in your own life, maybe sin or jealousy, hatred, arrogance. But the moment that you turn to Jesus and choose to position him rightly, a divine reordering takes place. As we surrender our preoccupation with ourselves, as we surrender our sins, our doubts, and our fears, as we bring the struggles of life to Jesus and say, you are the one true God, as we thank and confess our weakness, the Spirit lifts our eyes from ourselves and reminds us again of the mercy of Jesus. How many times have you come into this place, come into a space of worship and left a different way to when you first came in? This is because worship was always intended to be the heart of the Christian faith. Now, who's a science person? You like science? All right, get ready to be wowed by GCSE science. Here we go. The human heart has two main functions. The first is to pump oxygen-rich, life-giving blood around the body, and the second is to deliver waste products waste products like carbon dioxide to the lungs to be removed. Worship acts the same way in our lives. As we respond to God in worship and we surrender to him, everything kind of orders itself. It finds its proper place and perspective. It's like that oxygen-rich blood pumping around our body, nourishing us, bringing us peace, hope, and joy. And in the same way as we fix our eyes on Jesus and give him thanks, we find that the obsession with ourselves starts to melt. Those areas of pain and sin and shame start to loosen, and pride breaks as we humble ourselves before Jesus. Worship is a gift. It is the life-giving, refining heartbeat that if we will prioritize it, will transform not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. Finally then, worship is his reward. Hebrews 12:2 says this. For the joy set before him. Here we go. Let me find this. I think I'm a different translation. But here we go. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. You know, Jesus' decision to die for us, to die for me and you, wasn't rooted in a cosmic sense of duty. It was a beautiful and sacrificial demonstration of love. But according to the writer of Hebrews, there was something Jesus had his eyes fixed on, that he was joyfully expecting as he endured the brutality of the cross. And that joy was you. It was me. It was the reality that that he would not only save us, but be with us. No separation, no division. This was the joy set before him. A future where the separation of sin would be no more, and we would be able to be his people, and he would be our God. This was spoken of hundreds of years ago in the book of Jeremiah, where God says, they will be my people, and I will be their God, and I will give them one heart and one purpose, to worship me forever. And it's also seen at the end of time in Revelation 21, where John has a vision of heaven and recounts it, saying, I heard a loud shout from the throne, saying, look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. This then is God's reward, that at the end of time, after everything that he has done to save and redeem us, after sitting down at the right hand of the Father, that we would be with him and that we would worship him. Whether you're here for the first time and you're exploring faith, or you've been following Jesus for years, I want you to know this beautiful truth. God desires to be with you. Yes, we respond in worship, but God isn't after blind duty. He is longing for proximity, for intimacy, and for true relationship. Many of you will know the story of Mary and Martha in the Bible. Let me paint a picture for you if you don't. So Jesus comes round to their house with his disciples, and he is in the living room teaching. Martha is doing what many of us would be doing, hurrying around, cleaning and preparing food, desperate to be a good host. Meanwhile, Mary is sat at Jesus' feet, listening to him teach. Understandably, Martha is frustrated and shares her feelings with Jesus. Lord, she says, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. I think many of us can empathize with Martha when we consider all the things that are to be done in the kingdom of God. Jesus calls us to live lives of service and compassion and justice, lives that proclaim the good news through works and deeds. And there's a burden and an urgency to be doing those things, which is a good thing. After all, God has instructed us to live that way. But here Jesus says that Mary has found the one thing. She chose to be with Jesus face to face rather than serving him from a distance. Before we ever do anything for God, we must remember that God saved us so that we might be with him. We must, and to be close to him. And he died not only to make us servants, but precious sons and daughters who have the privilege of sitting at his feet just to be close to him. Another time, Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment is. And I love this because he never answers like we think he would. So he's asked, what's the greatest commandment? And he says, I'm going to give you two. And he doesn't answer on their terms. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. What Jesus is essentially saying here is that you're to love me above all else. And you're to demonstrate that love for me by loving others. You see, you cannot separate love spoken from love demonstrated. They're two sides of the same coin, but there is an order. Imagine for a moment a marriage where you continually demonstrate your love with acts of service, giving generous gifts, and sharing with anyone that would listen about your beloved. This is beautiful and it's important. But if you never spend time with that person, never actually look them in the eyes, taking the time to say just how much they mean to you, and to give them the space to do the same, that marriage very quickly begins to look hollow. Our love of Jesus and our worship of him must come before the demonstration of love to those around us. This isn't to diminish the need and the importance for a life of sacrificial service. Those things are so closely intertwined that you can't separate them. But we must remember that there's an order. One flows into and enriches the other. We should remember the words that God gives to the church in Ephesus in Revelation 2. It says, I know your works, your toil and your patient endurance. But this I have against you. You have abandoned the love that you had at first. This then is why worship, the time that is set aside to sit before him in prayer, praise him in song and dwell with him intimately, is our highest priority. Because first, love is of first importance. Worship is our innate response. It's the correct response. Worship resets us, worship redirects us, and worship is God's reward. And importantly, when we spend time with God and express our love, the demonstration and embodiment of that love to the world around us follows. I'll close with a quote that I had recently that says something like this. As worship goes, so does the church. I believe that the health of our worship lives will determine the health of the church and our individual lives, because worship is our response. It's the correct response, and it has the beautiful quality of recentering us and purifying our motives and our desires. And ultimately, worship is his reward. It's the eternal thank you, all that he's done and all that he is. So then, this is my encouragement to you. If you're feeling dry, worship. If you're longing for direction, worship. If you're stuck in your sin, worship. If you're overflowing with joy, worship. If your circumstances are painful and confusing, worship. In all things, let's be a family that choose to worship. Let's stand.